part of our science. Also, in the 21st chapter, Surah Al-Anbiya, in verse 33, it tells us, وَهُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ اللَّيْلَ وَالنَّهَارَ وَالشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمَرَ كُلٌّ فِي ذَلِكَ يَسْبَحُونَ. And it is He who created the night and the day, and the sun and the moon. They swim along, each in an orbit. This is also the cutting edge of science, that these planets are actually moving around as though they are swimming through water. And this description again shocked the scientists, because this is an understanding that they are only now coming to after years of research, pondering, putting together their information. But this man living in the Arabian Peninsula 1400 years ago, how could he have gotten this knowledge? Where did it come from? Even the ancient ones in the highest level did not have the knowledge in the same way that we have put it together today. In Surah Al-Anbiya and Surah Al-Naba, it speaks about the mountains, and it tells us, أَلَمْ نَجْعَلَ الْأَرْضَ مِهَادًا وَالْجِبَالَ أَوْتَادًا. And so it tells us, have we not made the earth as a wide expanse, and the mountains as pegs? And so, looking at this picture here, if you look at the mountain chains on the right, and then the picture on the left, you see, as George Airy in 1865 said, mountains are merely the tops of great masses of rock floating in a more dense substratum as icebergs float in water. This was the cutting edge of science in the 19th century. And we now understand this. We now have the ability to look down into the earth, and we see these pegs, which are literally holding the surface of the earth, protecting us from the molten lava inside of the planet, as though you pegged it down to keep it together. How can this man know that underneath a great mountain is a peg? That it's actually, in most cases, larger below than it is on top. What access to knowledge did he have at that point in time? It is a miracle. Also, we find in a number of chapters in the Quran, in Surah Al-Rahman, verses 19 to 20, it speaks about Maraj al-Bahrain. And this is a very interesting phenomenon that you find in a number of places in the world. I happen to live now in Cape Town, and there, those of you who have gone to the southern tip of Africa, we have what is called the Cape Point. And it is there, on the right side is the Atlantic Ocean, on the left side is the Indian Ocean, and if you look at the density of the water, it is not the same. If you look at the salt content in the water, it is not the same on one side or the other. The Atlantic is cold, the Indian Ocean is warm, but between the two is a barrier. There is a barrier, and one of the great French scientists, Jacques Cousteau, who many of you have heard about and seen in his travels, he traveled around the world to find these points. There is a point where the Mediterranean meets the Atlantic. There are points all over the world where this happens. There are also points where rivers come out and meet oceans. And so there is this barrier, and it says in Surah Al-Rahman, مَرَجَ الْبَحْرَيْنِ يَلْتَقِيَانِ بَيْنَهُمَا بَرْزَخٌ لَا يَبْغِيَانِ. He has let loose the two seas converging together with a barrier between them. They do not break through. And so what is amazing about this, when Jacques Cousteau and others went down into the ocean, they found on one side is the Atlantic, and the salt is a certain level. On the other side is the Mediterranean. The salt is different. In between is a barrier which has a midway amount of salt. It has a midway temperature. It's not the same. It is, and you cannot see it with your eyes. But the barrier exists. How could a man who never even swam in the ocean, lived in the desert where water, if you get a little water, you drink it, how could a person who had no access to the sea have brought information about a barzakh, about a barrier separating great bodies of water? This is a miracle. Continuing on and looking out in space, we find a number of verses. But one comes in particular, and this is Surah Al-An'am, verse 125, where it says, فَمَنْ يُرِدِ اللَّهُ أَنْ يَهْدِيَهُ يَشْرَحْ صَدْرَهُ لِلْإِسْلَامِ وَمَنْ يُرِدْ أَنْ يَضِلَّهُ يَجْعَلْ صَدْرَهُ ضَيِّقًا حَرَجًا كَأَنَّمَا يَصَّعَّدُ فِي السَّمَاءِ. Whoever Allah guides, He opens his heart for Islam. And whoever He lets to go astray, He makes his chest strained, ضيق. His chest is constrained as if he is ascending gradually in the sky. Now, only recently with space travel, they found out that as you go up into the heavens and the amount of oxygen in the sky decreases, your body would literally be smashed by the pressure. And so the Arabic word ضيقا حرجا, it is ضيق, it is very narrow, it's constraining to you. And the more you go up, you are constrained, and so the people who go high in the sky have to wear a special suit that gives them an environment, so they don't have to suffer in the constraint of going up into the heavens. How could a man living in the Arabian Peninsula, who had no access to space travel, how does he know what happens thousands of feet up into the air? It is a living miracle. When we continue, we find an amazing verse which is concerning fingerprints. In this verse in Surah Al-Qiyamah, it tells us, "Bala qadirina ala an nusawwiya banana." Yes, we are able to fashion in perfect order the very tips of his finger. Now, what does this mean? The Arabs at that time who read it, they said, well, it sounds good, it's all in rhythm and in order. But what does it mean now today in the 20th century, going into 21st, with access to information, we find that the fingerprint is unique. And each individual has a special fingerprint. This is your identity. And there's somebody who knows about your fingerprint too. This is your identity. And so it says in the Quran, we can fashion in perfect order the very tips of his fingers. Now we know what it meant. It meant that this is a unique print, a unique identity for each individual on the face of the earth, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one who is mighty in knowledge. Allamahu shadid al-quwa. He was taught by one mighty in knowledge. Reveals this information to a man who has no access to this type of science 1400 years ago. Going back to the sea, something that the desert Arabs had no concept of. We find in Surah An-Nur, it tells us in verse 40, O كَظُلُمَاتٌ فِي الْبَحْرِ اللُّجِّ يَغْشَاهُ مَوْجٌ مِنْ فَوْقِهِ مَوْجٌ مِنْ فَوْقِهِ سَحَابٌ ظُلُمَاتٌ بَعْضُهَا فَوْقَ بَعْضٍ إِذَا أَخْرَجَ يَدَهُ لَمْ يَكَدْ يَرَاهَا. It tells us in this verse, it tells us, or the unbeliever's state is like the darkness in a deep sea. It is covered by waves, above which are waves, above which are clouds, darkness above one another. If a man stretches out his hand, he cannot see it. Now, how could a person who didn't even swim in the ocean have a concept of what's going on down the ocean? They found out it is talking about levels in the ocean. And they found out that after 200 meters into the ocean, there is, the light becomes very, very faint. And there is actually waves, underwater currents and waves that is moving in one direction on that level. The next direction, next level, which is about 1,000 meters, which is below that, there is no light. And there's also waves that are moving in another direction. So you have a set of waves on the bottom, you can't see anything, another set of waves with a little bit of light, and above that you have the ocean and the clouds that are above it. It is the exact description in this verse. This is a miracle. Look at this closely. It is saying darkness in the deep sea, covered by waves, above which are waves. How can he know about waves, these waves in the ocean? Darkness above darkness. When you're down on the bottom, you can't see your hands. This is a living miracle. And it is something that we are starting to understand more and more as time goes by. And so the Quran